Hi all, thanks for tuning in. So I've been using the new MacBook Air M2 for quite a while now and I have several thoughts about it. Note that I have also done the full unboxing and first impressions and the setup video of this. So I'll be linking that somewhere above or below in this video. So make sure to check that out as well. And do note that this is my first MacBook ever. So for those people who are looking to switch from an older Windows laptop and are looking to buy their first MacBook as this MacBook Air M2, then this video will also help those people. Now, this machine has actually gained a lot of negativity on tech YouTube because of the controversies surrounding it, and I will also ramble about it later on in this video. So, this video is going to be a long one, but we'll be considering all the points like design, performance, battery life, and all other such aspects. So, feel free to use the timestamps or chapters given in this video to jump to the most interesting part of this video, whichever you want to go ahead with. Now on my channel, I always focus on reviewing a product by itself and not by comparing it with other products. So like other reviews, I'm not going to compare this with the older MacBook Air M1 or even the MacBook Pro 14 inch. So I'm going to be just looking at this laptop as it is by itself and how it performs in day-to-day usage. Firstly, if you are new, please subscribe to this channel and also hit the like button as it helps boost my videos. And if you're already subscribed, thanks for supporting my work. Now, starting off with the design, this laptop is actually on the first impressions when you take it out of the box, it feels very light. But in day-to-day usage, I've noticed that it's not as light as other Windows laptops that I've held in my hands. Now, talking about the thinness of this device, yes, it is light as they market it. But honestly, I've also seen the MacBook Pro M2 in the store, and it's not considerably thicker than this one. So I don't think the thinness of this is justified to omit the fan from it. But still, it is considerably thin and easy to carry around. The square design actually feels more premium, and the bottom legs also are very grippy. On my wooden table, I always felt it had really good grip, and I never feared it falling off or sliding off the table. Now, talking about this midnight color, I think that this midnight color is really awesome. But in person or in reality, like capturing this color on camera is really difficult. It either looks gray or black depending on the lighting situation, and also blue if you're pointing the right light towards it. All of which are actually really premium colors. But yeah, the fingerprints on it do look shabby, especially on camera. So if you want to shoot a lot of videos with it, then you would need to find some ways to, omit those fingerprints around it. But otherwise, I think even with the fingerprints on it, it looks and feels also really premium in day-to-day usage. I have captured a lot of fingerprints on it, and honestly, in my personal opinion, I do not mind it because the overall look of it is actually really premium, even with those fingerprints on it. But yeah, if you don't like those fingerprints and smudges, then it's safer to go with the silver and the starlight color. Now, do note that my iPad Air 4 and also even my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, which I use as my daily driver, these devices also attract a lot of fingerprints and smudges. So actually, in my experience, I've already gotten used to these fingerprints and smudges. But if you're not, then as I mentioned, it's safer to go with the starlight and the silver color. And also one thing to note about this fingerprints topic is that mostly it will be on the back of this device and not on the front. The front one actually looks cleaner and does not attract those many fingerprints as the back panel does. So when you're working on this laptop, you will be facing this front part and not the back part. So it might not bother you that much. Also, one thing to mention is that the lid opener, this section, is actually has very pointy and sharp edges. So that is something to keep in mind. And just be careful when you're opening the lid. It is actually difficult most of the times for me at least to open the lid with one hand. I have to use both hands. But sometimes with one hand also it gets open. I know this is not a very big deal, but something I thought I should mention. One thing I don't like about the design is that the screen, the display that opens up this lid, this angle, the viewing angle, this is what I don't like. I think I would have preferred if it, opened more because ergonomically speaking, if you're working and for a comfortable position, you might need to, open the screen lid more if you're using a laptop stand or something. So it does not go beyond this angle. I like the keyboard on this one. It's the buttons are really clicky. The size of the buttons actually is also considerably. Even if you have large fingers, then also your fingers will actually be able to traverse through the keyboard easily. But at the same time, it's also compact. So I really like the keyboard. The trackpad also is really large, and it's better than the other Windows laptop trackpads that I've seen. But one thing to note for all new Mac users is that you need to go in settings and change the tap as on. Otherwise, you will be pressing the trackpad really, really hard. Because somehow by default, Apple does not give that tap on. So make sure to toggle that in the settings later. Now, when you open this lid and there you see that notch there. Now, actually, this notch is not a negative thing. This is the design that actually is more appealing for this particular device, this MacBook Air M2, because this is actually got this modern design in an Air device. So honestly, I don't really bother that notch, and in almost all the apps, this notch actually fades away. So it does not bother me at all. Now, when we're talking about the design, we can't actually uh, leave the fingerprint or Touch ID aside, because that is, I think, one of the best things on the considering the design of this device. It's actually more reliable than my iPad Air 4's fingerprint sensor, and I think from Apple, this is the best fingerprint sensor I've ever used because it actually works all the time. I didn't have any single instance where it did not respond or anything like that. The keyboard is backlit. The lighting of the keyboard is very premium. It does not feel cheap like it does in some Windows laptops. But yes, there is one thing that I wish it had a keyboard shortcut to toggle this backlit keyboard on and off or increase or decrease the brightness. But I could not find that toggle key here anywhere. We have to go in the control center and do that manually. So if you guys know about it or any manual setting that can be done, then let me know in the comment section below. Overall, it is one of the best designs from Apple and also feels really premium and portable. My only complaint with it though is that it's not so thin that it could not fit in a fan. I know that the fan is reserved for the pros, but yeah, omitting the fan actually did not make it any drastically thinner or anything. Now, coming to the display, honestly, this display is all you need, even for semi pros. It is clear, crisp, and the color representation is also really good in most situations. I do appreciate the extra brightness that it has of 500 nits, but one thing I appreciate even more is that in lower brightness settings, the screen does not look weird or anything, which it looks in some other laptops or some other mobile devices as well, even with OLED panels. So I think it's a good thing that even in low brightness, the screen looks really sharp, really crisp, and all the colors are also maintained really well in low brightness. Watching content on this device almost feels similar to watching content on my 4K HDR10 supported TV. Although its refresh rate is struck at 60 Hz, but gameplay is still immersive. Unless you're comparing side by side with a ProMotion display. But if you're not, then I think you won't even notice that it has a 60 Hz panel or so. Now let's take a look at the webcam. Here are some samples. So this is how the video looks from the webcam of this laptop, and also the audio is from the microphones. So do let me know how it looks and sounds. Now this is a better situation as the light is not directly behind me. So do let me know how it looks. So if you see these samples, in the first part, I've recorded from the photo booth app, and that actually seems really poor in camera quality. But in FaceTime, if you see that they have done some optimizations with the app, and the camera quality looks a tiny bit better than that. But honestly, I still think that this 1080p webcam is still poor in 2022 standards. Even budget smartphones come with a really good sensor, and I think Apple could have easily fit in a better sensor. Maybe not as good as any budget smartphone or anything, but still the camera quality, even with the 1080p resolution, does not actually look good if especially if you're not in good lighting situations. Now talking about the speakers, Apple went a bit experimental on this and they kept it under the lid and they fired towards the display now. They do sound ample loud, but I don't think they are for like continuous music listening or so. For that, I would still recommend good Bluetooth speakers because the speakers on this especially without any tweaking or using third-party apps, the speakers sound less bassy and have less depth. This, however, actually gains up in media consumption and watching Netflix or YouTube, because the vocals in those are actually boosted up and sound really crisp. So if you're just watching like movies or YouTube videos, the dialogues will be really clear because of the characteristic of these speakers, and that is something I like about these speakers. But for music listening and all those purposes, I would still prefer you use a Bluetooth speaker.
Turn on ExpressVPN to keep you.
Now, talking about the battery life, let me sum it up in one sentence. It has the best battery life in any laptop ever. Even after doing heavy usage tasks like editing videos or playing games, in my day-to-day usage, I could easily get to about 10 to 12 hours of battery life out of this. Battery life on this device is something, I'm coming from older Windows laptops, and I could hardly find any Windows laptop or any other laptop which give battery life more than 4 or 5 hours or so. And this actually extends up to 10 to 12 hours, at least for me. For some people, if you're doing light usage, it may extend to even more. And I also went with the 67 watt fast charger, because I thought that the 35 watt dual USB-C charger actually would divide the wattage if you're charging another device, and it would charge this device really slow. So I went with the fast charger, and actually it lives up to the claims that Apple has done. It actually charges really fast. After actually plugging it in for about 20 to 30 minutes, I actually get about 40 to 50% battery life. So definitely, even if you are going out with this laptop without the charger, you don't need to worry about it. If you reach home by the evening, you'll still have a lot of battery life left on it, even if you're doing heavy tasks outside. Now, I'm not much of a fan of MagSafe, and I'm glad that this laptop has it, but the magnet is actually really strong, and I don't think the MagSafe actually serves its purpose, because if it gets pulled up, the magnet is so strong that it also actually pulls the laptop with it. So I just think that the magnet is too strong to, serve the purpose of MagSafe. But I'm glad that that feature is there and actually frees up the other two USB-C ports. To sum up the battery life of this laptop, I occasionally take out the charger from my shelf. That's a lot in my book.
Hi, editing Zaid here. So actually I just learned something that the MagSafe actually works in upward and downward direction. So I think it's not to like pull it parallelly, but if it's pulled in the upward direction, it goes off really smoothly. So yeah, that is something. So I think you need to arrange your laptop or the cable in such a way that even if it gets pulled accidentally, it will be in the upward or I think downward direction as well. Let me just try that. Yep. So it happens in the downward direction as well. So actually I take my claim back. This MagSafe is actually good since I'm using this for the first time. So this is something I just learned now.
Now here comes the most debated part. That is the performance. Now I'm not a supporter of the debate and discussion that is happening that this is an Air laptop meant to do Air things. No, certainly at this price point, people won't actually just buy this to browse the web or for multimedia purposes. If that is seriously your only use case, then I would highly recommend to save your money and go for a Windows laptop, because that will actually come with a lot of features like touchscreen and also high refresh rate displays and also a tablet convertible and all those other features, fancy features you might get in almost half the price of this laptop. So obviously people buying this laptop are actually also aiming for performance, and actually Apple also on their website mention on their headlines that don't take it lightly. So definitely the MacBook Air is not just meant to do just web browsing or multimedia stuff. It also comes with great performance with the M2 chip, and also takes the torch from the M1 chip. So since this section is of utmost importance, especially when it comes to this device, I'll be breaking it down into subsections. So look at each aspect of the performance when it comes to this device. And later on, I'll also give my share on the controversies that are surrounding this device. If you're also confused with that, then let's clear all our doubts here. Now here I've spec'd up my laptop to 16 gigs of RAM and 512 GB SSD. And you might be thinking that I've done that to actually acknowledge the controversy of the SSD, but we'll talk about it in a bit because that is certainly not the case, and I have my own reasons to spec this up. Now, firstly, let's talk about video editing. Now, I'm not using Final Cut Pro since it's very costly, and I don't want to take the risk of going with other sources. But I would use LumaFusion or iMovie, and I have been using to edit my videos, and also especially my entire unboxing, first impressions, and the setup video was entirely edited on this laptop using LumaFusion. And I would say that the performance is as expected. Everything went with a breeze, and there were no lags or beach balls whatsoever. But one thing I want to point out is that this laptop is actually for semi-pros. This could be people who just want to learn new softwares or who have just started a YouTube channel, or students who want to deliver some projects for their college work. So for them, this laptop is more than enough. But if you're a pro and if your work, especially with video editing, involves finance or involves clients, especially, then I think the pros are your best bet, and you should not even look at the Air because the pros certainly come with more sense of reliability when it comes to such heavy tasks. Not that this laptop cannot handle those. It's just that in those scenarios, like time is of great essence for you. So definitely we should look at the pros and not at the Air lineup. So I usually edit my videos, my YouTube videos, YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and stuff. So usually I have 4K 30 FPS videos and they do really well in LumaFusion on this laptop. So previously I used to edit these videos on my iPad Air 4 which had the A15 Bionic chip. And actually these videos were like really smoothly editable even on that iPad and even on my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra as well. But this MacBook Air M2 certainly with the 8K media engine actually gives some more boost and some more reliability to this. And also it's easier on a laptop to traverse through the UI while editing. It's easier and faster. And also I tried to edit an 8K video also. It was really smooth. There were no beach balls whatsoever. Now coming to gaming. Now MacBooks aren't really for gaming. But actually because of the capabilities of the M2 chip, I think this is something to even consider because you might still be wanting to game sometimes and still do that on a MacBook. But still, let me actually clear this out that if gaming is your priority, then MacBooks are not for you. Actually, Macs are not for you because many games are not supported for Macs. So even if you would be running them, you would need to run them on VMs, which is not so efficient. But if you do casual gaming, especially like games on the App Store like Asphalt and stuff, and also games which are optimized for Mac, then there are certainly no issues. And I've tried playing such games, some games on the App Store like Asphalt, and also some first-person shooter games, which were really smooth. There were no frame drops whatsoever. But just to push this a little further, I also tried to run Intel-based games like Arkham City, and I try to do that on using Parallels Desktop. Now, one thing I want to mention is that running Intel-based games on this laptop is such a pain because none of the free softwares like Play on Mac or PorterKit actually worked. For me, only Parallels Desktop worked, and it's not for free. It does come with a 14-day trial version, so you can try that out if you want to, the same which I did. And I tried to run the Arkham City game using Parallels Desktop with Windows 11 installed on it. So the game was certainly playable, but here is where the thermal throttling issue actually came into picture. So after about 5-10 minutes or so, I started noticing serious frame drops and lags in the game. Not to an extent where it was not entirely not playable. It was you can still go ahead and play it, and at certain point when the game is not processing so hard and if you're just holding still, it will cool down and it will still gain that performance. But it did throttle a lot. And actually this is a really heavy thing because you're actually hosting a VM inside, so that game is also limited by the resources that are allocated to that VM. So, and on top of that, this is a pretty heavy game too. So this is an experiment that I just did to push this laptop, and certainly I did notice that thermal throttling. So if you want to do such type of gaming, then I would not recommend this laptop to you. You should certainly not even look at the pros. I think you should look at gaming laptops, Windows gaming laptops, because for half the price of this laptop, you might get a really incredible and powerful Windows gaming laptop, which will not require any VM or such. It can directly host that, and it might also come with NVIDIA and such graphics cards for which these games are actually optimized for. Now, coming to the day-to-day performance, it's actually as expected, buttery smooth. But sometimes I did face some freeze downs or lags, and I think this is something to do with macOS. There are some macOS bugs right now, and I think this is to do with those bugs and not with this Mac itself. Now, there are some more things that actually affected my day-to-day experience, and this is something, as I already mentioned, this is my first MacBook ever. So there are some things that you should consider. Like when you first set up your device or first set up a new user, the trackpad by default actually has the force press setting on, and it does not have the tap setting on, which you need to go ahead and do that manually in the settings. So I was actually editing my unboxing video, and I was pressing down hard on the trackpad, and I was wondering why this trackpad is so bad. But I actually found out later that in the settings you can actually turn the tap on and the trackpad becomes smooth as ever. There are also some other things with macOS which I'm still not able to digest, like closing apps. Like in Windows, closing apps is so easy. Just if you just press the close button, then it will actually close the tab and free up that much memory in RAM. But it does not happen in Mac. You have to manually force quit them later on. So this is not actually good RAM management, and this is something that you need to keep in mind manually to have better RAM and better performance. So just something to note. Then there are also some other things like freezing of the trackpad in the settings, and also while opening the Notes app, I found that it did not open or especially come to the foreground. I had to manually bring it to the foreground. So there are some such things with macOS which I'm not able to get around with. A new user which is coming to a MacBook for the first time will notice this, and I hope these tips help you for that. Now, coming to the most interesting section regarding the controversies that are surrounding this device. Firstly, the single SSD NAND chip situation. Now, you might tell me that I myself acknowledged this and I went for the 512 gigs version, but that's not true. If you see in videos by Greg's Gadgets and also Max Tech videos, on the base model, which has a slower SSD, they've actually copied files of about 18 to 30 gigs, and that actually completed in about 1 to 2 minutes. The 100 gigs file transfer actually took in about 6 minutes. Like 30 gigs in 2 minutes is still a reasonable time, I would say. It is still pretty fast. Sure, I mean, it's unfair that the higher storage versions can do this in 30% less time, but I don't think it makes a difference in day-to-day usage because you're not actually seeing how much time it's taking. You're just putting it to task, and once it's complete, you will proceed to your next task. And it's not like a way huge time, like 100 gigs in 6 minutes is, I think, pretty impressive, I would say, especially if you're coming from any older laptop. And mostly, we would only copy about a few gigs from your phone or something if you have big videos or if you want to take backup. So it will not actually matter having that slower SSD speed. One scenario where it might matter is the swap, because if you have 8 gigs of RAM, then definitely this swap memory, the SSD will be used to actually contribute to your performance, but having the slower SSD might affect your performance that way. But again, it's not that big of a deal. I get it. Apple shouldn't have done this. But what's more frustrating is that we still get a 256 gigabyte laptop in 2022. Even my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra is with the 512 gigabyte storage. Because I think as per today's standards, and especially with the apps that we use, because if you see even day-to-day apps like Word and Excel in the App Store are of about 2 GB each. So certainly like with this, you'll quickly fill up the storage. So 256 gigabytes in a laptop in 2022 is, I think, very less. I think the base model should have certainly started with 512 gigs. And that is why I went with the 512 gigabyte version, because I edit a lot of videos, and even my last unboxing video actually took up about 20 gigs total in total. So like this, if I keep on editing videos, then it will like continuously take up my storage. And I also experimented with the Arkham City gaming that I did, the heavy gaming, and that actually with the parallel desktop took about 100 gigabytes itself. So like this, if you want to do experimenting, if you want to edit a lot of videos, be it just for your YouTube channel and not any pro videos or anything, but still 4K videos also take up a lot of space. So if you're doing such activity, then definitely 256 gigabytes is very less for you. And also bumped up the RAM to 16 gigabytes, because again in 2022 with a laptop for this price point, having 8 gigabytes does not make any sense, because especially with the RAM management that macOS does, 8 gigabytes would be occupied pretty quickly. So I think 16 gigabytes should be a minimum. So even if your usage is mostly light, but sometimes you might want to do some heavy tasks. So even for such a usage, I would recommend to bump this up to 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of SSD, because I think that should be a standard nowadays. But yeah, even if you're going with the base model, I don't think you would have any issues, because uh, when it comes to even having the faster SSD on my laptop and also with the 16 gigabytes of RAM, like rendering a 4K video is not like blazing fast. It still takes up its own time. So even if you have the base model, you won't notice that much of a difference even with the spec'd up model. It's just that it will give you a bit more reliability, especially if you're consistently and regularly doing heavy tasks. Now, next thing is about the thermal throttling. Now, this thing is legit and it's actually natural, and especially with the device with no cooling, active cooling system on it. If you actually extend the loads on the CPU for long periods of time, it is bound to thermal throttle. That is why at the start of this video, I actually mentioned that this laptop is not so thin that it could not fit in a fan, and that would have really helped in this thermal throttling issue. But I'm happy to report that this bar or threshold where it actually starts to throttle is considerably high, and you might not notice it every now and then. It will just be in very heavy situations. And that is why actually I'm not so positive about heavy gaming or anything on this device, because of that thermal throttling stuff that is there. But other things, other even video editing and stuff like that, that should be fine for most people, especially if you're not using many effects or anything. And honestly, apart from that heavy gaming test that I did, I never ever felt the laptop even getting warm. So at the end of the day, I would ask you to keep it simple and don't make it complicated with all the confusing reviews and all the controversies surrounding this device. Keep all the controversies aside and just think what you want. Do you just want a laptop to browse the web and watch Netflix and YouTube? And occasionally you might edit a YouTube Shorts or an Instagram Reels video. Then in that case, you can just go ahead with the base model itself. But if you are looking to start up a YouTube channel and edit videos every now and then, but with not a lot of effects, just some 4K 30 FPS layers, multi-layered video, or even as a student, you want to try out some pro apps and work on some projects for your college work, then I think you should spec this device up to at least 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of SSD. And if you're a person who expects your laptop to constantly deliver heavy projects, or even for your YouTube channel, you want to use several effects and all, then just go for the M1 Pro MacBook Pro. And just skip the M2 MacBook Pro for now, unless you really want that touch bar and nothing else. So that was it. The MacBook Air is definitely for most people, and there shouldn't be much confusion around it. And it is just another MacBook Air device. You can just forget about all the controversies. And if you have any doubts, then do let me know in the comment section below. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.